Thank everybody, and then I really okay. So give like 5 seconds, everybody get like a good breath, and then before the end of the session, I really try to be brief, because I think some of the points that I have to make has already been made by probably 3 panels at this point. So I will not try to reinvent the wheel here. As BB just introduced me, I'm responsible for performance and impact team at GCERF. I'm presenting the results that we did in analysis of a baseline study in Sri Lanka. I'm not the only one doing that. There are 2 co-authors that I mentioned in the first slide. Just for those who doesn't know GCERF, and very quickly, we work all around the globe now at this point. We have 3 hallmarks, if you wish. We are a global fund, so we fund what? We fund civil society organizations to do PCV at community level. That are the 3 things that if you were to remember of GSurf, you should keep. My team is responsible for the monitoring and evaluation of all of this. So what I'm going to present to you is a very small slice of a small exercise, so just bear with me on that. I think if I were to introduce my presentation is, let's take a step back. So we have been hearing for like good 3 panels about the threats, AI, social media, everything. I think for me, when we did this baseline, the question was, it doesn't actually make a difference if your exposure to social media versus traditional media, right? I think the step back is a good thing because normally we work with assumptions. So is assumption right or wrong? And that's basically the mental frame that I want you to go with me today. So literature, again, I said, other people just cover it a lot. I think the main points here is that internet has been used by V groups. I think the literature also is very clear that the internet doesn't cause radicalization. I think that's important to say. It's not a direct link. It's a mix of offline, online. Actually, the difference between offline and online is actually very criticized. So I think that's also important. There are different functions where V groups do propaganda, recruitment, logistics, funding. I think recently with the COVID-19 wars, well, the genie got out the box a little bit in terms of the area. And I think that I land the last point is that the PCV work deals with this whole issue in a very different ways, right? We discussed today a little bit about redirect method. We talk about taking content online. I'm really here because GSurf is more the prevention side. We work what some people call the inoculation or the media information literacy part. So it's really more the prevention, like continue element. Just going to the main topic in a way is like, is there a difference between traditional and new media or not? And I think different researchers have looked at it. They're looking in Germany, some look at Malaysia, for example, so for both developed and developing world, there are different results. I think some have been talk about that, not in the PCV field per se, but in the field of misinformation vaccines, for example, that some researchers look at if your exposure to certain media, if affects your predisposure to believe that vaccines work or do not work. And the answer was yes in that particular research. So it's that kind of environment or academic background that we're working in here. So actually, the presentation. So it's a Sri Lanka project. We did a baseline there 2 years ago. And just a very short background on Sri Lanka. It's the 29th on the JTI index this year. There is a lot of, Sri Lanka has been an issue of violent extremism for a long time, right? It's not a new phenomenon. It's just different across the years, right? You're talking about decades of VE there in another situation with the Tamil, and then later, now today, with most recently the Easter Sunday bombing in 2021. The religious divisions between different ethnicities and different religions did not really get better recently. Actually, there's a lot of online hate speech, has been exacerbated. But interesting, in 2021, there was a survey on like how the Sri Lanka population actually consume media. And the vast majority actually favor traditional media. And the vast majority looks like trust traditional media vis-a-vis online. And I think that's a bit different than the sample that we're gonna have here. So the sample, the design. So that's basically a baseline study of a big project of GCERF there. It doesn't really just focus on online. Online is just one of the slides that I decided to present today because of the panel. It was a baseline study of 2,000 people, two-station sampling across 5 or 6 districts in Sri Lanka. The questionnaire was translated in local languages. Was during COVID, so there was a kind of a trouble to do it. It took a long time. We use also the Brave, so the same as like in the presentation. So I think there's a kind of parallel here. And now what I'm presenting today is a little bit the initial analysis of it from the media perspective, which we use ANOVA just to look at the different relationship between demographic factors and then also the multivariate regressions. So just here, I'm not gonna mean just basic statistical, like simple analysis about the population, the median, and everything. Here is like the average Brave results, and I think the previous speaker has spoke about Brave at length in the last panel, so I'll not go back there, but if anyone has questions that I'm happy to say about. And here is the initial results. So you're gonna see that the majority, and then just one thing that I have to say, these focus on youth. And that's a big difference. This population group is from 15 years old to 29 years old. It's not the general population. So here, the initial results already show a little bit the difference, right? If you remember the initial population sample for Sri Lanka that the study has been done, is very dramatic, traditional versus social media. Here is a bit more even, like 50 to 40 something, because it's the youth population we're talking about. We're doing ANOVA, we really look at, there's significant differences between the group who follow social media more often than the people who doesn't follow traditional media. And that's where prompt to go to multivariate regressions. There are some findings about people who use neighborhood community centers to receive information, but that's not much the objective here, so we'll just jump. I think one thing that was kind of interesting is that when we look at the behavior of verifying information before sharing, there was not statistically significant with anything. And that's normally sometimes we kind of preach that, right? Before you receive something in WhatsApp, please verify your information, please share. They don't really appear to be any statistical significance with the resilience, with the subdomains, nothing at all. So here, there's the results of basically it's a very simple model of looking at different demographics vis-a-vis the resilience factors. We use 2 models, one with marriage and without marriage, just explaining that that's a very weird because normally we would expect that marriage help. I mean, normally the literature would say that marriage, when you marry, you're less likely to join V groups and blah, blah. Actually, in this particular sample, we found that marriage was a very strong predictor of being less resilient. So with kind of, we say, wait a minute. I mean, and I think that demands a lot of questions. And I think they demands a lot of questions maybe because of the sample age group. We're not talking about a sample from 20 years old to 50. We talk about 15 to 29. Maybe here you're talking about early marriages, for example. So that's a situation that might change completely the way that we understand marriage, actually, as a particular factor on resilience. But that being said, let's go to the main findings today. We actually found that the fact that these youth prefer and use social media or online as a preferred mode of engaging and finding information actually had a decreasing effect on the resilience, so the Brave 14 overall index, but also was also strongly correlated and statistically significant in their subdomains, in particular 3 subdomains: their cultural identity domain, the violence-related behaviors, and the violent beliefs. The other 2 ones, which is like linking and bridging capital, were somehow statistically significant in the without marriage model, and if you consider p-value less than 5%. So it's a bit more mixed there, I would say. But the other three, in both models, very statistically significant. So that's the baseline we did. Based on that, we designed the project that really tried to address this situation from different ways. So we, for example, work with journalists who actually publish a lot in social media on how to actually, for example, report ethically. We work with youth to produce content social media in these locations. We try to like bring kind of the information of like the public area on the public arena to be like broadcasted. So there's a lot of work in terms of how to address that. I think it's interesting that, so I'm running the midline assessment of that right now. And I didn't present because it's still being analyzed, but the early results says that actually, we actually improve somehow the ones that are not statistically significant here. So interesting, when I compare the people that we work with people we did not work, so using quasi-experimental design, there is significant improvement on bridging capital on the youth. But there was no improvement on the violence, but there was improvement on the cultural connectivity. And I think now what we're trying to understand is like why, or is about timing. Because I mean, this study in the midline happened 1 year after the project started, and you still have more 2 years to go. So I think now what we're trying to understand is like how we can actually start to impact the violence domain, and over the next 1.5 years. So I think there's a good midpoint for us to understand how to basically tailor our approach. I think very simple conclusions. I think there is a big difference between the sample that we have, basically youth, and the population in general, and I think that's important. I think did show some that social media's primary source of information has statistically significant results in terms of decrease in resilience in some domains and some subdomains. Of course, this has some limitations, just a baseline study. So there's a lack of in-depth qualitative data that help me to understand the ins and outs of that. And we are trying to solve that with the midline now a little bit. I think there's a clear need to, I think if you say recommendations, one, there's a clear need to work with the youth here on the online, because that's what the data tells us. I think there is need for more like research on qualitative understanding of that, in this case, Sri Lanka. And I would say there's a third recommendation that we need to improve and work with our partners to increase their capability on digital sphere. And I think I'm actually happy to have Mito's Lab in the same panel, because we just partner with them to really do across the world capacity building project with our partners across the whole world on how to do digital literacy program, how to do social media program, and then how to monitor and evaluate the projects. So I think it's a long way to go, and I think someone mentioned earlier today about this idea of building the capacity of civil society. So we are trying to do that, and actually in partnership with people who actually are deep in understanding on how to do that. And I think that's the way to go. And I'm done here. Thank you.